Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I have a slightly different presentation. It was really great seeing the last two presentations, more of an academic perspective. I really am passionate about seeing academic research applied, especially to novel settings like this. What I want to do is give a presentation on summarizing a couple of old results. What I want to do is give a brief talk about two papers that were presented in the past on a couple of master's level projects, among some other things. So this presentation is called "Can Social Data Be Used for Prospecting? Past Evidence and Why We Need an Open Research Program." And I'll unpack a few of these things. But first, who am I? My name is Dr. Colin Conrad. I'm an assistant professor here at Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia, not too far from Acadia University, which is one of the hosts of this conference. I'm at a school called the School of Information Management, and we're located inside of a faculty of management. So we don't really do business. We're one of the American Library Association's accredited schools in Canada. But we do really interdisciplinary data management. And I'm also cross-appointed to psychology and neuroscience. So this area of research is one, it's not my primary domain like it is in the last two presentations that you would have seen, but really part of a bigger picture. Because what really drives my interests is questions about what makes people, how does information technology change people's lives, and how does information technology use impact who we are as people? So I do research on enterprise information technology, human-computer interaction, and data mining. And this question comes up every once in a while about am I going to share these slides and the papers discussed, and I'll give those a link to those at the end of this video. So what I want to talk about is this. Many of you are familiar with this challenge. This is, of course, the ice bucket challenge. And me being somebody who's always interested in things like social media, social data, one thing that I've always found quite perplexing is that the way that, especially for younger generations, younger people, the way that we communicate and the way that we understand things like charities are transforming, and they have been transforming for some time. So it shocked me to go back and review some of my old notes. The Ice Bucket Challenge is not new at all, and is probably one of the more successful charitable campaigns, right? But this is something from back in 2015. And so it's really an inescapable fact. Social media has changed so much about our lives, but especially charity and charity and nonprofits. It's something that we need to be able to pay attention to and develop proficiencies in. So why should we care about social data? So social data, when I say social data, what do I mean? I mean, in social media, we're constantly generating data, right? So on social media, there are technologies that facilitate exchanges through virtual communities. And they are platforms in which you can amplify messages well beyond traditional media. So in the case of charities and fundraising, right? Very successful online fundraising campaigns will be really, really good at this, at amplifying messages across different social media in this virtual community. So on social media, people express activities, interests, and opinions. They develop networks of similar people. They generate copious amounts of data. And this data can tell us so much about the lives that we live, the ways that we interact with the world. And as you've seen throughout the presentations today, it really has a lot. Our online selves are so much about, such a big part of what we do. But wait, this creates lots of other issues as well, because especially when you're talking about charities and social media and social data, we've heard about this and we've heard about this in the news, and it's not been good things, right? So many of you will be familiar with this. This is a picture of Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook, giving testimony to the U.S. Senate, and this was as part of a big big issue that had to do with political donations and social media data. They call it the Cambridge Analytica Facebook scandal. So uh, this has raised a lot of points, a lot of concerns in the public media about how social data is used and how it can be used in ways that don't really promote the human good. But really, we should dig into this a little bit before we go deeper into what we can and can't do. The question that I want to ask you as an audience is this: how does Facebook make money? This is something that I ask my undergrads in my working with data class, and it's surprising what type of responses we get, right? So 4 questions. Do they make money by selling technologies and services? Well, not really. That's a little part of what they do, but that's not really the big part of how they generate revenue. Do they make money by selling data about you to other companies? Many students actually say yes. This is clearly what Facebook does, and this is not great. Well, they really don't. In fact, Facebook is very protective about their data, and this is one of the things that Cambridge Analytica sort of violated in this whole issue. Do they make money through their apps, through WhatsApp and Instagram, for instance? Well, a little bit, but these are free apps. They don't really charge consumers. But really, what they're doing, Facebook as a company, the vast majority of its revenues are by selling advertising. So instead of giving that data out, what they're selling is an advertising business model, right? So they're using that data to be able to work with companies to make promotions more effective, and oftentimes these are also charitable causes, right? So it's important to keep this in context when we talk about how social media it can be used in AI and machine learning for the purposes of data mining. So the Cambridge Analytica scandal is such a big deal because you had hundreds of thousands of participants give their data up freely on Facebook quizzes, right? But it was for an academic survey. It wasn't for the purposes that they wanted to give their data up for. And so that data was used in turn for political campaigns and for political data mining. So as a result, the political campaigns were extremely targeted and very effective. And this really raises a critical point that I wanted to kind of get across and contextualize these studies. So the principles, there are ways of doing ethical social media research in the space of charitable giving. So in this case, the Cambridge Analytica scandal, they outlined 3 clear principles. One of them is consent. People must agree to the terms of use of the data and what you plan to use it for. The second is privacy, so users must control their identifying data, be able to withdraw it if it's something that you can identify. And third, transparency. The methods must be outlined publicly, and I want to talk about that at the end of this presentation. So we want to continue with social media research because, as we've seen from so many different speakers, from Rachel, we saw that time and behavior, they predict donations. This is something that we want to see. And from Russell, we saw that text data and qualitative data is really important for predicting big donations. But for all these good reasons, we want to be able to do social media research. So what did we do? 2 studies, one of them from back in 2015, 2016, we really started exploring how would you apply what we call text mining. So natural language processing. It's a branch of artificial intelligence that uses natural text data to make oftentimes predictions, but also tell something about an author of those texts. And so we studied 219 Twitter users from the US state of Missouri who self-identified a political donation. And this was before the 2016 presidential election there. So we were way ahead of the times, it seems. And what we did is we investigated tweet profiles, tweet aggregates, and we applied a few different techniques to this data. One of the things that we do in natural language processing is we take these texts and we transform them into what we call engrams, which are combinations of words or characters. And then you treat those like they're as if they're numbers, and you can feed them to a machine learning algorithm. And so what we did is, with this little graph on the top right, it illustrates different combinations of engrams and lengths of documents that can produce better predictions about who people's political affiliations were based on those tweets. And so you can actually see very distinguishable signals among partisan lines among these types of tweets. And similarly, with table one, you can see some of the character combinations that were really good at distinguishing some types of personal profile characteristics. And so the CNG classifier, which is one of the classifiers that we explored, was able to really effectively identify people's political affiliations and be able to predict whether they self-identified as having given a donation. The second study that I wanted to outline was this one that we did more recently. This was done by Carlos, a master's student in the Master of Electronic Commerce program back then. What he did is he then applied some of these findings to charitable causes specifically, rather than just donations in political parties. And so he studied 4,000 donors to a cause who consented to donor research. And what they found is that profile descriptions and tweet profiles were really good sources of data at being able to make predictions about whether people actually donated to causes. So profile descriptions being the 140 characters that you put on your Twitter profile, and tweet profiles being these collections of tweets that a user has provided historically. And then he applied, again, the n-gram analysis. He used a technique called term frequency inverse document frequency, and then applied some classifiers, which we saw, especially in Rachel's presentation, about, in this case, logistic regression, support vector machines, and naive Bayes. And at the bottom, there's this table that shows that using a combination of these things with word unigrams, term frequency inverse document frequency, was able to predict with 71% accuracy whether or not a given profile in a collection, as well as randomized with a series of non-donor profiles, was that in fact somebody who was going to give to this cause. And so this type of natural language processing is quite powerful at making predictions. This is a very crude type of exploration to text mining to this domain, but it suggests that there's a lot of room for improvement in this space, and that there's a lot of rich research that can be done to textual documents that people generate on platforms like social media for learning things about charitable giving and charitable donations. So eventually we could use this technology to develop ways of making better recommendations for donor prospectors, or bringing in additional insights about potential prospects that people might be interested in contacting, assuming that you had the right means to do so ethically. And so this really brings us to the crux here. Why I think this type of research is important is because there's a lot of need to make it transparent. There's a lot of need to know that this type of social media data is likely being used for targeted marketing, and it should be disclosed publicly about how we can do that. And there are ways of doing this well. If we study people who consent to having this type of analysis done, they consent to give over their data. And if we're transparent about our techniques and able to give these techniques out freely through an open science type framework, we can achieve a vision that can build this type of technology out for everyone's benefit, especially for charities and charitable giving and nonprofit organizations. But yeah, so this is where I'd like to stop for this. Thank you for your attention. If you're interested in continuing this conversation, don't hesitate to reach out. You can find me at colinconrad@dell.ca or at cd_Conrad on Twitter. And as well, I've provided links to these presentation slides at colinconrad.com/blog, and it's the first blog post that you'll see on that site. And yeah, that's what I have.